Robert, great to see you.
Thanks for having me,
I
Joe.
appreciate you carving out some time. So, listen, the deal was officially announced today. I'm curious, in terms of this deal, were you out looking for a buyer, or was this just something that sprung up out of nowhere? What was the approach?
Well, like you and I talked about briefly, when COVID hit, I think the world changed for everybody. By the way, isn't it so interesting? All my non-tech friends say to me, "Could you have ever seen all of this happening?" And I'm like, "Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I saw,
yes,
I saw the cloud, I saw work from home."
yeah,
But I think what nobody saw was that it would all happen at once.
yeah,
And that was the big shock for me. And because of our business, we monitor a lot of online chatter, we have a lot of threat. So we kind of knew something was happening in China, just kind of a gut feel. So we made some changes very quickly. And logically, I thought, man, our business is really going to take off. I mean, forget the personal effect of COVID, which is horrific, but from a business, we thought this is great.
right.
And then I'll never forget this. About 4 days after I made that prophetic decision, one of our customers called me and said, "We're going to lay off 60,000 people."
Yeah,
And then I thought, well, my business is going to take off, but there'll be no customers left to sell to.
yeah,
What are we going to do? So there was about 3 days where I honestly couldn't sleep, didn't know what was going to happen. Q1 happened, our sales went up, and I thought, well, maybe it's pantry stuffing or the cyber version of pantry stuffing. And then halfway through Q2, I realized this is a brave new world. I realized that cyber isn't going to be a slow burn in terms of growth. We've gone multiple plateaus. And so again, it was like, yay. But then it was like, oh man,
yeah,
if I can't keep up with the biggest companies in the world, and I don't mean in terms of people and stuff like that, which is important by things like innovation and tech and automation. If I can't keep up, I'm going to get left behind, or I'm going to get acquired by somebody bigger than me, and I'm going to have working for somebody. And I didn't want to do that.
right.
So we started the process, looked at a lot of firms. I mean, anybody who's in cyber is really sexy and hot right now. So there's no shortage of that. But the hard thing was finding a firm that we could partner with, because
Right.
I arrogantly think I know what I'm doing. I've been in cyber since I was 21 years old, which is a long, long time ago. And
Right.
so it's not like I needed somebody to come in and hold my hand and tell me the vision of the future, but I needed a partner from a capital business perspective. And so, we signed a term sheet last year, worked through the diligence, and then finished the deal yesterday with Apax, who's a big top 10 global equity firm. They have a lot of experience in cyber. They did Sophos. They're investors in a company called Coalfire, which I'm sure you know,
Yep.
and that kind of stuff. So excited.
So, Robert, you mentioned the capital intensity of this market now. MSSPs, it's no longer just about remote monitoring and using third-party tools. I do see sort of the quote-unquote market leaders innovating, developing their own software. Is that really about what this journey's about?
It is, but I always caution people, don't dismiss remote monitoring so quickly.
Okay.
Because that's what a lot of people do. They say, oh, it's just a VSOC or a virtual SOC, but that stuff's really important. Like the fundamental foundation of logging and correlation to those logs and alerts is still really critical. Because if you're not looking at the right stuff, I can't make analytical decisions on that. So that's always my first caution. People are like, oh, it doesn't really matter to me who's monitoring. I'm like, it really does. But to your point, it's not a value add business anymore. It's a necessary business. It's a foundational business, but it's not so much about value add. So the
Hmm.
question is, where is the value? What are customers looking for? There was recently a report that said the number one decision criteria for enterprises in buying an MSSP was threat. The other interesting thing was, though, from a procurement perspective, it wasn't in the top five.
Right.
So, it's like people want to talk about threat, but when it comes time to buy, it's not in the top five. And I think that shows you still the level of immaturity in our space.
Hmm.
What we believe is that it's a lot about innovation, from an alerting and content perspective, and the vector is changing to more of a proactive approach and simplicity. Like you look at the MDR market, Joe, it's growing like crazy.
Right.
Why? Is it more secure than the SIM market or the logging market or the XDR market? The answer is no, but it's simple. People understand it and they like the idea of being proactive. So I think all of that is coming together, but in some ways I know too much because I've been around too long. So people ask me, those kind of simple questions, and I tend to kind of go on and say, well, yes, you need that, but you also need this. And I think you need a comprehensive approach to security.
Got it. Got it. Now, I do have some more sort of product and development questions, but I actually had a branding question I wanted to throw in as well. I did notice in the official announcement about this, on first reference, you're still using the full company name, but on second reference and thereafter, it's HG. Is that going to be the sort of company brand going forward? Is there a clue there?
Well, if I could have got hg.com years ago,
right,
I would have stuck with that. And no, it's Herjavec Group. We just shortened it. But funny story, Joe. So, as you can imagine, this has been a very emotional process. I built this company with 2 employees 17 years ago. We're now 250 million, 300 plus people all over the world. And, it's my business. I owned 100% of it up until yesterday. We're self-funded through the hell and all that difficulty. I mean, I remember times, I'll never forget a time I had to sell one of my cars to make payroll.
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult. And so as I'm going through all this process, I'm staying level-headed. My wife's with me. And about a week ago, I had a bit of an emotional moment. To your point, I had to sign away our logo.
Yeah.
Right. Because I still own a company, a significant part of the company, but not all of it. I now have a partner. So I had to sign away the rights to the logo to the company. And it just, like I remember sitting there at my kitchen table, drawing it by hand. And our logo is a wax seal, which was the first form of security, obviously, for letters and that kind of stuff. But, I think we're in a very strong position from a branding perspective. And I think obviously being on TV helps and having a consumer brand helps. But I think our marketing team has done a great job of converting that. I mean, this interesting stat, when you're growing very quickly in a market, the cost of acquisition for new customers is very high. And a lot of these pure play MDR players, I just don't think they're going to survive. I mean, we have competitors in the MDR space that lose more money per year than many multiples of our marketing costs. And so you say to yourself, how is that possibly sustainable? So yeah, it helps to have a good brand and it helps to build on that.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned, it's funny you mentioned MDR, obviously a hot area. From my vantage point, on the one hand, I respect the MDR players. On the other hand, I've always, since the day we launched the site, believed that MDR is a subset of MSSP. It's under the umbrella of MSSP.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I will say though, I do respect anybody who can grow.
Yeah.
So I have huge respect. My eyes really got open to the MDR space through Apax. When we were going through our diligence, it's funny, when we were going through a diligence, we'd never met them because of COVID.
Right.
So we had to find a country that we could all fly into and not quarantine. And there were only 2 options, Turks and Caicos or Dubai.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, please let it be Turks and Caicos. So we kind of all went to Turks and Caicos, and we started getting a lot of these questions from their team and their advisors as to, why aren't you bigger in MDR? Why aren't you making a bigger push on MDR? And I was like you, I'm like, it's just a subset of a managed security. Like it's not sustainable as a standalone market. But when I looked at the growth rates, I realized we've got to double down on it, and we have. But I think it goes to simplicity. I really do. I think many of our competitors have made security so complicated. Like, how many vendors are there in our space now? That I think there's a bit of a pushback from customers They just want that simplicity. And MDR is attractive, it's sexy, and it's simple.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, you did mention sort of the emotion of deal day and your wife. I'm wondering, did did you feel the presence of your parents as that's going on? And
Oh my God.
here's why I asked that. So I'm a, I guess, second or third generation. My grandparents came over from Italy on my dad's side. My dad's an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. I'm sort of an entrepreneur. I'm more of a journalist who fell into the entrepreneur space, but we sold a company and it was very emotional. And I thought about my family's journey in each stage and oh my gosh, like, did you feel like, tell me a little bit about
Oh my gosh.
what was on your shoulder that day?
It's, I mean, my story is very similar. I came here on a boat, like literally. So, all the sharks on Shark Tank always make fun of me. They're like, "Oh my God, here we go, the boat story again." But it's true. My dad was in jail. We came here on a boat, just the three of us with one suitcase. And at the time, it didn't seem like a big deal to me. And the accomplishment of my dad coming here didn't seem a big deal, as it doesn't when you're young. But when you get older, you realize the sacrifice and how hard that was. I sold my first company for $60,000 and I made $40,000 in income that year. And I went home with that $60,000 check and I said to my mom, it will never be better than this. I will never make more money than this. And I ended up selling my second company for $30 million. And the first thing I did was I paid off my parents' mortgage.
Yeah.
And I went to the bank, I paid it off. And about 2 weeks later, my mom comes to my house and she found out that I had paid off the mortgage because she sent her a mortgage payment and the bank returned it. And she came and she gave me the money back. And she said, we're so proud of you. We never need or want anything from you. And I mean, those were my parents and they passed away a long time ago. And I happened to be in Toronto a couple of weeks ago and I went to my mom's grave and my dad's grave. And, the funny thing is, as you get older and you have a little bit of success, when I sold the first company for $60,000, there was 5 things I wanted to buy. A Corvette and a watch and this and that. When I sold my second company, there was 20 things I could buy and I did. There's nothing I want to buy now.
Right.
There's literally nothing. All my friends there are saying to me, "Oh, what did you buy?" And I haven't bought anything. I bought security and I bought time.
Time is
But
it.
what time is it? But what I really missed was how proud would my parents
Yeah.
have been to have, lived through this with me. And I always think that's what great entrepreneurs have, is they have this need and desire to do great things. And so it's funny, like I'm being very retrospective today, but that's the number one question all my competitors, friends are sending me. What did you buy yourself? And I just say, I bought myself security and I bought myself time.
Amen. That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know how I transitioned back to a technology question, so I'll just get there. All right. In terms of a technology question, the announcement today, it did mention that HG, you really want to focus on identity and SOAR, security orchestration, automation, and response. What does that mean? Are you going to go recruit a bunch of developers and really double down on code? I mean, what do those areas mean to you?
Well, we have a development team, and this goes back to the investment, and we had a good development team. But when you're self-funded, you run a great business that is laser focused on customers, but it's hard to invest ahead of the curve. So I've known for a long time we need a bigger development team, and that's the first thing we're doing with this money. And the 2 areas, as you said, is SOAR. So first of all, SOAR is an unbelievable, effective technology that will change the world, but not be obvious to customers.
Why?
Because SOAR is the ultimate backstage product. SOAR makes the things you need to do anyway easier, more efficient, and automated. but they still need to be done.
Mhm.
And the downside of SOAR is extremely complicated with playbooks. So if you don't have good playbooks, there's no point in having SOAR. I mean, SOAR is not a software or a hardware you buy and you push a button. Where I think SOAR is going to see a huge benefit is in making us more efficient in order to be able to manage our customers, roll out content, and do updates. So it's like our sales team's like, oh my gosh, should we be telling everybody we have this incredible SOAR platform? I'm like, sure, but it's not like the customers are going to see something. They're just going to get more value from a content and development perspective. So that's our view of SOAR. I think it's here to stay. Automation for those kind of things, patches and firewall updates and rules updates, it's here to stay. The other one is identity, and I don't need to tell you this, but with COVID, what is a perimeter now? Like, is my office a perimeter? Is your house a perimeter? And so tremendous growth in identity. We bought a company last summer out of the UK, really, really strong identity company, and our business has just gone boom. So we continue to develop. We have a software tool that they had to roll out management of identities. You know, identity is really three phases: design, architecture, implementation, and then the ongoing care and feeding. And so we have a software tool that helps with this part. By the way, identity to me is the SAP of cybersecurity. You know why? Because the projects never end. It's so true. It's highly, highly complicated, but tremendous value.
Got it. And then what about international expansion? The announcement mentioned, hey, you know, we're going to double down on international. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I think that the world is becoming compressed.
Hmm.
And I think that the bad people we all try to protect our customers from have no borders. So, you know, I'm Canadian, my wife is Australian, our kids are American. My wife has this, Joe, my wife has this recurring nightmare that we're in vacation in a war-torn country. And we go to the American embassy and they say, you know, with the babies in our arms and bombs going up. And the embassy says, we'll take the babies, but not you. And then, of course, my wife says, why are we on vacation in a war-torn country? There are no borders for cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And the world is a very open place. And I think my Canadian background makes me very open to the rest of the world. But the other driver is talent.
Yeah.
You know, the downside, America is still the greatest place in the world to do business, but America is also an expensive place to do business. And there's so much need for identity. We're seeing the cost for talent skyrocket.
Yeah.
And that's good. And some of that our customers can absorb, but we're looking to expand in Europe and South America. And we already have a big presence in India that we want to make bigger.
Got it. Got it. And then what about you personally and the company? You know, sort of your message to customers and partners. On the one hand, the private equity firm has acquired a majority stake in the business. On the other hand, you remain a quote unquote significant investor in the business and CEO. Is there a long-term transition or succession plan in terms of you, or is this what you're doing for the rest of your life?
No, I'm doing this for the foreseeable future, and that was really important to me. We had the opportunity to sell 100% of the business, and in the 11th hour, we had a very large vendor in our space kind of throw in a last-minute high lob offer, and I think if I would have had that offer, if I'm being honest, at the beginning of the process, I may not have been here. But at that point, I was so invested in what we could build, and I'm so passionate about it. There was no going back. So, you know, I'm not going anywhere. I'm excited to do it. I've rolled over a lot of my equity. You know, yesterday I went to sleep and I said, I'm not putting my alarm on. I need a day to just kind of take it all in,
Yep.
right? Just kind of relax, maybe have a cigar, a glass of wine, maybe go to the golf course. I woke up at 4:15 this morning because I was so excited to get going. Like I have this childish enthusiasm about the future. And I just feel I've been given a once in a lifetime opportunity with a bigger truck and a bigger playpen. And man, I just want to go.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's the perfect transition. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for the
Uh,
interview.
Thanks, Joe.